Hello everybody! Today I want to show you a couple of variations that you can do with the blanket stitch. And yes, I'm using multiple different threads, but you can use 6-stranded embroidery floss. So use different thicknesses. For example, for this thinner thread you can use 2 or 3 strands of embroidery thread, and for the thicker ones you can use 6-stranded embroidery floss. So I'm using the Eco Vita by DMC, and I don't know what the colorway is called, but I'm using a light yellow color here, and I'm doing the regular blanket stitch. Much better. I'm very sorry. This is why I couldn't show you the beginning of the stitch, but I'm starting again here. So I start at the top or at the outer ring and stitch to the next ring or the inner ring, and then you come up on the outer ring again, and then you make this mirrored L shape, so to say. You can see here what I am doing, and then I make a much shorter stitch, just exactly like the previous one, just with a shorter distance between both stitches. And you can see that here there are some pairs all around this wobbly circle shape that I drew freehand before that. As always, I am using the heat erasable pens to mark my fabric before, and you can iron or use a blow dryer, anything that makes a lot of heat to erase the lines after stitching. I found I find this method of mark making almost the easiest one now. I'm using it all the time, and also there are white versions of this pen, so you can even use it on darker fabrics. But the difficulty is sometimes the gel of the pen causes some sort of chemical reaction with the dye of the fabric. So if you are using colored fabric, it can happen that the lines don't disappear. It might happen that you have a more bleached out line in the color of the fabric you're using. So if you want to try this sort of pen on colored fabric, then make sure to make a test first if that is the case for your fabric. So this is the second part of this stitch variation. I'm adding a shorter version of the blanket stitch to the previous blanket stitches. I find that it creates kind of a doily optic. I found it quite cute. So it is a little bit tedious to make all these tiny stitches, but it is also very relaxing to make these scalloped edges, and it took quite a bit of time to stitch all of them. So I'm making 3 blanket stitches inside the wider gaps. There were some gaps that called for 4 stitches in there, but most of them were 3 pieces. And I then stitch 1 into the double blanket stitch part, and then 3 blanket stitches again for the wider gap. So here is the last bit of the circle. You can add the new stitch if you want to change threads. You can just start it at the last loop, so to say, of your previous stitch, and then just come up inside the loop, just where the thread is coming up from below. So that's very easy to end and start anew, and I will show you the last stitches so that you can see how to end the blanket stitch. So here is one of the rare occasions where I had to cover a little bit more of a distance, so I'm adding 4 blanket stitches, and then you can see where I put in the needle to complete the circle. So last blanket stitch, then you pull out and then you just stitch into the first loop from the beginning. And then I pull the thread through a couple of other stitches in the back. This method is very straightforward for this type of backside. For the next stitch, I'm using Tapestry thread by DMC. It's some very strong pink color. And here you can see I'm starting in the middle of the spiral and go back into almost back into the beginning, and I'm stitching quite a circle for the middle part, especially with this very thick thread. It is very hard to follow the lines completely. So it is basically a circle in the middle, and then I'm branching out to the outer sides to make the spiral happening. So you can see I'm stitching in the middle with the inner starting point, and then when the circle is complete, which is basically now, I'm stitching around the already existing stitches. You can stitch under the previous stitches, or the way I am doing it now, that I stitch over the previous stitch. So the blanket stitch has this arm or leg, depending on how you want to see it, and the horizontal line that is like the straight line on the top, and then you have the leg. So I'm stitching the leg of the newer stitches into the horizontal stitches of the previous line. It's a little bit like crochet, I think. It looks a little bit like crochet too. And that's how I'm stitching these. But as I said, you can also do the stitch right now that I'm stitching over this horizontal line. You can stitch under it so that you can see the full blanket stitch like on the outer side. As I said before, I'm using the DMC tapestry wool, and I'm also using the anchor tapestry wool at another point, and I find that they are a little bit different in shape. I think the anchor one is a little bit more on the softer side and a little bit, I don't know, a little bit looser, and the DMC one is a little bit firmer and tightly spun, I think. So I like the DMC one for this part a little bit better. Just in case you want to stitch along with me, I think these shapes are very easily drawn freehand, so you can easily copy them if you want to. But there's also a template for this on my Patreon account, and there you can also see all the materials that I'm using with the color numbers and some tips. And that's a nice way to also support my work here on Pumora, so that I can make regular embroidery videos like this one. For the last stitch, I'm making the last blanket stitch and then stitch into or under the last row, so to say. And in the back, you can weave in the ends quite comfortably, especially with thick threads like this one. You have a lot of room or volume of the thread to bury it inside the existing threads. For the next one, I'm using a metallic thread by soie. I don't know. It's the metallic tresse. It's the number 2829, and it's a very pretty, sparkly thread. And I have used many metallic threads already, and I think this one is one of my favorites. The color is a mix or a blend of blue and yellowish green, and it looks so much better in person even than in this video, although I think the color is depicted quite well. And for the sleeve, I'm doing a very loose blanket stitch, so you could stitch very close to another to cover all of the leaf, but it's not much fun doing that in metallic thread, so I would choose another form of thread for covering the entire thing. So I'm going on one side, and then I do the middle line with a couple of stitches. It's basically a little stem stitch, but you don't have to be very precise with this. It's just a little line in the middle, and then I'm starting again from the bottom up, or it's from the bottom of the leaf, so to say. It's the top for this side of view. And as you can see, I'm always stitching with the stabbing method. So I go into the fabric and then go out of the fabric, not in one motion like the sewing method or scooping method, but like this. And this allows me to have the frame in the same spot all the time, because I don't have to move the frame around to get the right motion with my right hand side. So I stitched the other leaf too, and now I'm starting the second rows. I'm starting with this spiral again, just exactly like the one that I did before. It's basically some sort of chain stitch in the middle, because it's so condensed in the middle for this very thick thread. And this time I want to stitch the stitches a little bit denser, so the fabric is covered more, and that the leaves or the petals are a little bit thicker and not so much white peeks through this through the stitches. So I'm doing the first circle, and you can see I'm always stitching in the middle, and now I completed the circle, and then I go outwards. So depending on the size of your circle, you have to stitch 1 or 2 or sometimes 3 stitches into the previous row. That's a little bit like crocheting in the round. If you want to make a circular shape, you have to add more stitches each row, so that, or each round, so that the circle stays flat. Otherwise it would deform and not be a flat circle anymore. So I'm doing this here too, and you can see in the side-by-side comparison that this time it is much denser than the one on the left side that I did previously. And it is not as easy, I think, with this very thick thread, but it is very quick. You can do this with any size of thread or thickness of thread. You can do it with one strand of embroidery floss or very thin pearl cotton. That's no problem at all. But I like or wanted to do this particular stitch with a little bit more of a voluminous stitch. So I did. And then the middle is complete. And as you can see, I marked some petal shapes like this half moon shape or half circle, and not an entire spiral like I did before. So this gives us the opportunity to try out different densities, so you can make the stitches a little bit looser like I'm doing here, and then there comes another layer on the next set of 3 stitches, or not 3 stitches but 3 petals, and those get a little bit denser, and then you can make the outer one another color, or a looser shape, or a little bit denser too. There are many options that you can use, or you can use a thinner thread for this, so that you can try out some some variations of the stitch, depending on whether you like that or not. So this is a little bit looser. You can see that the stitches are not covering the fabric up as well as the middle one, the middle circle does. So this is another way of showing the difference in color you can achieve with different densities. I think that this stitch works very well with quite big leaves or petals, especially when you use thick threads like this one. It is quite an easy stitch to fill every areas, so it's a nice fill stitch. And I wanted to show in this example that you can use it for filling out areas as well as a decorative border, like the outside, the doily stitch, so to say, that I did on the outside. And I think the blanket stitch is a really fantastic stitch for very many purposes. You can also use it to fill letters, and for this you can, for example, stitch block letters on one side and then fill out the same space with on mirrored on the other side, so that the legs of the stitches fill out the inside of the block letter, and the outside is framed in the horizontal line that develops. I'm a little bit sad that I didn't include that here in this one, but it's too late now. So I hope you understand what I mean, but maybe I can do another video for some letter stitches that are easy to make. Now I'm adding a second color. You can do it in the same color too, but I think this adds more visual interest, and I think it's also easier to see. So I made a mistake here, which I'm reversing as soon as possible, and that is that I stitched from top down, but you have to stitch from the bottom up, so from the inside up. I was too lazy to unthread the needle, and that's why I had this problem. So you can see I lay the thread at the top, and then I go from the bottom to the top under this little stitch that is forming. I hope you can see it. I was a little bit faster, but you have plenty of time to see it. I will leave in quite a chunk of this process. Sometimes when I film stuff and am not speaking over it while I'm stitching, I tend to stitch a little bit in my regular stitching speed. So it happens that I'm a little bit too fast or too quick to see it. But basically you do the same thing. This is a detached buttonhole stitch or detached blanket stitch that you can do, and you can do it on top of any stitches really. You can make scalloped edges for chain stitches or back stitches. I think this stitch is very versatile, and it is also a very nice touch that you can add to this single colored flower to introduce a second color. Yeah, and it is very nice stitch. You also have to watch out a little bit because of the increases, so you don't stitch one loop into the previous loop, but one or two loops or three even into the previous loop, so that the stitches really stretch out and lay flat. You can add an additional round or many other rounds to make a real petal out of that, but I wanted to add the outer petals on the flat surface, but that's a very nice way to include 3D techniques, and also very easy to do. And yeah, if you would use the same color, I think it might be a little bit more invisible or not as noticeable than with a second color. Also, the one on the right side that I did, I think is a little bit, has not enough loops, so that it tries to what is the name? It tries to go to the center again and wants to bulk up and not go outside. So I think I could have added a couple more loops in there so that it stays where it has to be. I think you could iron it flatter if you want, so that might solve the problem. So I'm using the pink, or what is it, light pink, on the outside, also with a looser what's it say? Blanket stitch. Oh man. And this is also the anchor tapestry thread, so you can maybe see a slight difference. I think yeah, it's more looser, but I'm not sure if this is because I rewound the skein, so maybe that's the reason. Maybe they are basically the same, but I have found that DMC and anchor threads do differ in texture in general. So the 6-stranded embroidery floss I find is smoother and thinner for anchor threads, and has a more not texture but more volume for the DMC thread. So I think DMC skeins of 8 meters are a little bit voluminous, a little bit more, there's more grip to it than the anchor ones. So there are some leaves for this one too, and this time I'm using the Vita in a dark green. I like this color very much, so I'm trying this out. And this time I'm making this type of double blanket stitch that I did on the outside too. And I think that it adds to the leaf shape. It doesn't look as dull as the regular one that I did with the metallic thread on the left. It makes a quite different shape, I think. So you can use that too. I omitted the middle row for these leaves, but you can add it too. I think it would look great with a middle line so as well, so you can do that. So here you can see the last pair, and the tip of the leaf I just make the last fixing stitch, and this time I'm starting the thread from the top or the line from the top, you can do that. And I'm using the previous stitches to guide me through along the way up again. But you have to be very careful. I got it right for this leaf, but the second leaf that I did, my second side got a little bit wonkier. So if you are not as good in stitching symmetrically, it might be a better idea to start from the same side, like I did it from the top to the bottom. And if it usually works easier if you start both sides from the same angle. So both sides from the top down and not from the top down and then from the bottom up. So I think that works much more organically. I don't know why. It's the same like stitching with Satin stitch, that if you start in the middle and go to both sides one after another, it always looks more symmetrical than if you stitch from one side to the other. I don't know what that magic is or why that is, but it always works much better. So here's the last leaf that I'm doing, and yeah, I will show you how I warped the leaf on the other side. It didn't work out as fine. So here is the one. I used the same holes, but I started a little bit too further along the line. So I started on a bad part. So I should have should have started over, but I didn't, because I didn't know it would become that bad. But in the end, I just left it. For the next part, I'm using the Eco Vita in a pink shade, and this is a very thin thread, and I would suggest using 3 or 2-stranded embroidery floss if you're stitching this with cotton embroidery floss. And I'm doing 3 individual blanket stitches, and then I leave a very large gap in the middle and make 3 additional stitches, and that is what I'm repeating for the entire row. So this stitch and the doily style stitch and the third one that I'm doing after this one are from a book that I showed you in a video many months ago, I think 2 years ago maybe, which is Constance Howard's Book of Stitches, and I like it a lot, and I will suggest, if you can get your hands on this book and you are interested in creative stitching, then I suggest using this book for many interesting choices for using this thread and stitches. So here you can see I'm doing the same stitches, so the same blanket stitches, but from the left side to the other side, and I'm pulling the gap so a little bit down so that it's more it's bent. I don't know the real word for this, that it's pulled down, so it's more like a hexagon. If you would stitch this as a fill stitch, you could make little hexagons or be I'm sorry, my English is not really good today. The honeycombs, so that's the word. You could use that for this stitch, and I found this pattern very interesting. And you can either pull the thread a little bit down, or you can leave it as a line. You can make the lines a little bit slimmer, or use a slim line and a thick line. You can choose anything you want, and I really found this style of blanket stitches really interesting to do. And it is very easy. As you can see, I'm only stitching the regular smegular blanket stitch, and it's a little bit chaotic, but I think that's also okay to not have everything perfectly stitched. And I really liked the outcome of it. Of course, you can make this very perfectly straight and not slanted, or a very equal spacing and so on, but you don't have to. So I think this adds more of a organic structure or texture to this embroidery, and you can fill out shapes in this way, so that you can use it. So weaving in the ends on the thicker parts of this embroidery, that's very practical to have it. So the next stitch, and also the last stitch, is from the Constance Howard's Book of Stitches 2, and I really had to think how to accomplish it, because that's why I'm struggling in the beginning to somehow get it. I didn't practice it. The Stitch Lab is for experimenting, so I didn't experiment before the experiments, but I'm just trying out the things on the fly and on the go, just like I would if I wouldn't film this. So this didn't work, and so I ended the threads, and I also saw that in the stitch book it was similarly done. So they ended the stitch and then added a second one. So the difficulty was here how to find the right flow for the stitch. And I found out during the stitching that the easiest way to create some kind of workflow is to work diagonally from the top left to the bottom right, or if you want to stitch from the other side, you can also stitch from the top right to the bottom left. So that is what I will do soon. I think I will start at the bottom now. So disregard what I stitched to this point and only follow what I'm doing now. So I think this is where I realized how I could do it. I'm not 100% sure if this is the right way to do it. So I'm practicing here a little bit and then realized, oh no, I did that mistake before. So in my mind, I wanted to stitch each scale in one go, but that didn't work out, or I did not find a way to accomplish that. So I realized, okay, maybe I can just stitch from the top down like this, and this is how it works really well. I think if you have a lot of areas to fill, then a lot of space to fill, then this would be the preferred method to do that. And because I have reached the bottom, I then added in the little stitches to the bottom, from the bottom up, and then this also is like a ladder, so that you are at the top again, and now you can stitch from the top to the bottom again. And I think that this worked quite well. Also, I found that using a variegated thread was a really good choice, because it looks very interesting to have the color changes in the thread, because you are using a lot of thread in this stitch, so you can really see the color changes. And that thread is the Vaupel and Heilenbeck Wuppertal. It's the German brand V+H Garn, and it's a German cotton thread, and it's similar to tapestry wool, but a little bit thinner, I think. Yes, I think it's half the thickness of the regular crewel wool. Oh man, these these yarn names or thread names are sometimes a real, what do you say in English? In German we say tongue breaker, Zungenbrecher, because some words are very hard to pronounce, and that breaks the tongue. So here I'm stitching the next set of stitches from the top to the bottom, and I really enjoyed that. It is at first you really have to wrap your head around that, how to make these, but if you think in diagonals, then it is much easier to understand where your stitches have to go. So the back side looks like this, very similar to the front, but if you see the stitches that are on the back, the long stitches are mostly from the additional stitch that goes up, and not from the blanket stitches. So the blanket stitch itself is very, very thread saving. So the last row, and here you can see that the threads really have a nice long color change in it. I think if you want to achieve a similar look, you could use 2 or even 1 strand of embroidery floss. You can use thicker threads, and I think you could also use 3 instead of 2 stitches for the bottom part of each scale. And I think this could be a great stitch for scales, or if you have flowers, you can do that too, or just as a fill stitch to make these rounded edges. If you want to make pretty borders or ruffles of a skirt or something like that, that would look nice too. And here you can see how I go all the way up again. Yeah, so I tried to save a bit of thread and just made running stitches basically. So here's 1 stitch, and then I go up on the other side and have just a little bit of thread between each stitch, and then I go to the next one and stitch it up. And besides the colors, the color change, I think that it's not as visible, that the stitches are not worked as a U shape, but consist of 2 different stitches. So this is how this piece looks in the end. If you want to learn more about embroidery stitches and how to use them, make sure to subscribe and watch my other Stitch Lab videos. So I wish you a lovely day, and until next time, bye!